Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us to stay curious today. We've got a potpourri show put together here, including the landing 40 years ago of the third landing of our nation's orbiter, Columbia. And it was out there at White Sands Air Force Base in New Mexico unexpectedly because in Edwards Air Force Base was flooded. And we're going to talk a little about that. Gordon Fullerton was the pilot. The commander was Jack Lausma. Jack's still alive. Gordon passed away a couple years ago. And we're going to share a little about that landing from one of our friends that was there, Mark Usiak. See a couple pictures of Mark that we've been sharing all week talking about this program. We also have got some great lineup of speakers. The next 7 episodes of Stay Curious, we got 6 speakers lined up for you, some great conversations, so you won't want to miss that. But I want to thank everybody for watching Stay Curious as we go into our 3rd year. Marty Winkle, my co-producer, and I used to say cameraman, but there's not much camera work anymore with our beautiful Streamlabs studio that he's the engineering behind a computer that we were so lucky for the endowment from the Marie Louise G. West Endowment to buy this equipment. And you've been watching us on Facebook for over a year and a half, but since July we've been on YouTube, Twitch, and Spotify, thanks to Jessica Galloway, a young lady with her business Cheap Development that helped us take it to a new level. But we want y'all to know that we take very seriously what we feel is our task to preserve the birth of the American space program right here where it all began, Brevard County. In our museum, where I'm literally sitting here in our Hyatt Place studios. Thank you, Hyatt Place, for sponsoring Stay Curious. Our studios, Marty and I, are literally 11 miles from where the Artemis SLS rocket is sitting on pad 39B. And the whole coast has been going crazy about it. People want to get pictures of it. The sun has been moving right behind it. So myself and a bunch of people are trying to get the right picture of the sun coming up behind it. Talked to some NASA photographers that were in Titusville today doing that very thing early this morning. So we are grateful that the program's expanding, and we have got some amazing guests lined up. Friday's show, wait till I tell you about it here in just a minute. But I'm going to first start off with a little bit of space history today. This week in 1958, let me get my glasses here. In 1958, this is President Eisenhower, and this is President Eisenhower's military band of, not military, this is President Eisenhower's Science Committee, okay? And I didn't grab that. Oh, I forgot my notes on that, sitting there in the printer. Well, I'll do my best here to ad-lib this because in 1958, this committee decided that they thought military rockets in orbiting the Earth would benefit Earth, okay, would benefit the Defense Department. And you go with that, a big duh. Marty, could I get you to do something and go into my desk and the printer is my script there? We don't have anybody in there, but I'm lost without it on a couple things here. Sorry about that. But it should be in the printer beside my desk. Anyway, Eisenhower, 1958. Think about that. They hadn't even thought about the repercussions of orbiting things around the Earth that might be an advantage. After all, the military high ground, this Eisenhower, who was the Allied general of all the Allied forces, he should have thought about that in the 1950s. Anyway, we're going to enjoy this gentleman, Gary Allgaier, tomorrow. This is a young Gary Allgaier in his Apollo days, all right? And Gary is a NASA structural engineer. He worked on Apollo. He worked extensively on the Apollo-Soyuz test project and the shuttle. And a NASA structural engineer we've not had the likes of here on Stay Curious. They are actually involved with the physical building of the vehicles. So we're going to do a program with Gary Thursday all about building the Apollo, mostly the command module, and with an emphasis on Apollo 16 that we're going to be celebrating. in space this time of year. So, and next, then Gary's going to be Thursday. Okay, Friday, I don't have a picture of him, but thank you, Marty, very much. Friday is we're going to have a gentleman from the European Space Agency, a very young gentleman, Rock Keat. Rock is a engineer for European Space Agency that is working on the Artemis command module, or the service module, I mean. The Artemis service module is being built by Europe. That's here, of course, on top of the SLS rocket. And then we're going to talk about the Lunar Gateway, the space station that they're proposing between the Earth and the Moon. Actually, it's going to go around the Moon, North Pole and South Pole, because we want to land at the South Pole. And he's going to talk about designing that and how it's going to be a utility vehicle of sorts, so that can go to asteroids as well as Mars. This gateway is going to be a multi-purpose spaceport, and we have got a young man, Rock Keat, is going to be here with the European Space Agency tomorrow to talk about that. And in fact, he's going to be here Friday, so we're not going to have Triple T, and I talked to him, and he's okay with that. I did want to look back here at this. Thank you, Marty, for getting this, to have a decent program with you all today. Well, there's the USAC brothers. I was teasing our guests there. Go back to Eisenhower here. And it's been a very busy day. I've been at Kennedy Space Center at the Astronaut Memorial Foundation. Karen Conklin, our executive director, have been doing things to get our April 16th golden anniversary of the Space Shuttle event going. So I apologize, I'm a little stuttering out of the chute today. But on March 26, 1958, Eisenhower's Science Advisory Committee affirmed that the development of space technology would benefit human curiosity, scientific exploration, maintenance of national prestige, and defense. Duh, you say to the defense. NASA opened for business October 1st, 1968, with a budget of $90 million, which is about $800 million in today's money. 64 years later, you're wondering, are you getting your taxpayers' worth out of NASA? Well, Congress approved NASA's budget. They're working on $24 billion this year, fiscal year, October to October. And the Space Force is under a $15 billion budget. But the Department of Defense has their own top secret military space spy versus spy budget that we believe is in excess of $25 billion, much more than what NASA gets. The bottom line for what NASA has done for our world in 60 years is the cost to American taxpayers is less than 1/2 cent of every tax dollar you spend. You spend a tax dollar on something that goes to the government, 1/2 cent of that goes to NASA. 40 cents of it goes to the Defense Department. So I think we've got our money's worth there. All right, looking here at the Gary Allgaier tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss him. Fascinating. We sat down and kind of talked about what he's going to talk about. Fascinating. Tom Usiak's going to be in the house Monday. Tom, we're going to have a great conversation with him. He is going to tell you how NASA disseminates the photographs, how off of a single negative they make slides, they make big negatives, they make all kinds, and of course the prints. That is his brother Mark beside him there. Then we're going to talk about being at White Sands for the landing of STS-3 40 years ago this morning. And we are going to have Hugh Harris, voice of NASA, will be kicking off the shuttles of April, which are 16 shuttle missions in April, folks. So Hugh's going to kick that off with us on Tuesday. And he and Tom will be in the building at the same time because they're going to talk about reigniting the Chroniclers, the NASA tribute to people who have told the story of our space program. And Thursday, we're going to have a next week, Mikey Haddad is going to kick off his appearances on Stay Curious, all about payloads with Mikey Haddad. So we're looking forward to some regular monthly visitors like Hugh Harris and Mikey Haddad, and then get our other guests in and out of here as we can. And a very special guest is going to be April 12th, the 42nd anniversary of the launch of Space Shuttle Columbia. This is, of course, Jim Harrington, launch director, who launched 22 shuttle missions in 3 years. He had 1995, 7 shuttles, 96, 7 shuttles, and 98, he had 8 shuttles that were launched. One of the most ambitious 3 years of the whole program. And I talked to Mr. Harrington last night, and he's anxious to come on and share some of his wonderful war stories about NASA. But he was also, Marty, a Cape Canaveral guy, and was an engineer on the Apollo program. And he was involved with the command module checkout. And then he was the lead of STS-1. He was over the first flight of Columbia, and pretty much George Page's right-hand man up to the launch. So George Page was the launch director for that, a very seminal character of NASA's great history. So we got a lot of people lined up for you. That makes it easy on Marty and I. Of course, I got to come up with some good questions, and then just get out of the way. So that's where Marty helps me by putting up the sign that says, "Shut up." No, he doesn't have a sign that says that, but you might, okay. Anyway, we wanted to also thank you, James Sparvero. James Sparvero is a reporter for News 6 out of Orlando, and he was in the building today to talk to me about the Hubble telescope discovering the farthest star ever seen. A single star was discovered. Thank you, James, for always thinking of the American Space Museum when you need a sidebar story or some B-roll. We appreciate that. He's a good young reporter here on the Space Coast. James Sparvero. So check out News Channel 6 in Orlando today. This is the photograph NASA released just a few hours ago. I didn't even know about it when James called me up. The arrow points to a single star that is 12.9 billion miles away. That's right, light years, not miles, light years. The light that we're looking at here left almost 13 billion years ago. They've even given this star a name, Earandel. It's the oldest, it's not even the oldest star ever spotted. There's an older star that they think is older than the universe, which is impossible. The universe is thought to be about 14 billion years old when the Big Bang happened. And we're not going to get into the science of that. So we know that stars were formed in early galaxies, but how this star is by itself and not in a galaxy, and it might not have formed 14 billion years ago, or 12 billion years ago, but its light has taken that long to reach us. So either it was formed earlier and moved away from us supersonically, or not even supersonically, some wormhole type thing. This is also seen by, you see that arc, that red arc there? That is called gravitational lensing. They're actually looking at the star is projected from behind a big galaxy mass. It's like a lens that reflects things around. Again, very complicated astrophysics, and I'm glad that you all trust me that I'm telling you what's right here, that this is a star 13 billion light years away, within 1 billion light years of everything being created. Now, the James Webb Telescope will be looking at this. This is not the Webb, this is the Hubble. 32 years later, the Hubble telescope is still making groundbreaking science. And what is interesting about this that I told the Channel 6 newscaster today was the technology, Marty, on the Hubble telescope is 30 years old, okay? Over 30 years old, because you've got a technological cutoff. If you're taking 5 years to build something, you're going with the technology. It was launched in 1990, so it was actually delayed for almost 10 years, all right? So the technology was 1980. So you're looking at 40-year technology is still working to amaze us. And if the Webb telescope, once it goes online, it's basically thinking about film versus digital. Hubble was the film days. The new Webb telescope is going to be digital days, which digital means a lot better to capture things and no processing and stuff like that. So, but the Webb telescope is going to start giving us pictures in June, though I'm sure in a few weeks they're going to be, though everything's ready and they teased us with a in focus star, they will start doing science with that here very soon. Okay. We want to get this gentleman back to Earth, and he came back to Earth today. Mark Vande Hei, an American astronaut, came back from 355 days orbiting the Earth, 10 days short of a year, 51 weeks, the record for Americans. Okay, there are several Russians that have spent up to, I think one Russian spent almost 450 days in space, but I'll double check that for you. But Vande Hei here is 55. He landed this morning in Kazakhstan. Okay, there was no national incident or anything. And as the Russians made it clear, we are a team up here in space, no matter what's happening on the ground on Earth. And the commander of the space station was Russian, and he turned over the keys to the space station, so to speak, to American astronaut Tom Mashborn yesterday before they got in the spaceship and come back to Earth. And he emphasized that they were all a team together and that what's happening with the invasion of the Ukraine does not affect the astronauts on the space station. So, Vande Hei 55 was carried out of the spacecraft, all right? And I want to emphasize this. When you see the Russians come back in their little spacecraft, they carry them out. You're too weak to stand up. After about 200 days in space, you cannot walk out, all right? You have to be carried out, put in a lounge chair, get acclimated to gravity for a few hours, even before you can, they'll even let you walk. So we go to Mars and be in weightlessness for Mars for 6 months to 9 months. If something happened on the landing on Mars, you might be incapacitated and you can't move until you get used to the Martian gravity that's a third of Earth. So there's nobody there to carry you out and put you in a lounge chair when we go to Mars. So they're going to have to do some exercise regimes to make sure they stay in good health. And yet this is after 2 hours every day exercising, running, doing some they do weightlifting with bungee cord stress type of devices. So it is very rough on our bodies, but we adapt very easily to space, weightlessness, and then we do adapt fairly easily back on Earth. All right, but there's some physical issues that have to be worked out. But there's Mark Vande Hei. He's happy to be back on Earth. He is on his way back to Houston. Johnson Space Center. The Russians returned to Star City, to their training center. Now, his 51 weeks in space eclipsed the American record set by Scott Kelly, which was 340 days in 2016. Vande Hei climbed to 23rd on the all-time list of time in space. He has 2 missions, 523 days in space. 523 days for this gentleman on just 2 missions. There are 20 Russians and 2 Americans ahead of him in the top 26. Jeff Williams has 534 days, and Peggy Whitson is the all-time champ for America with 666 days in space. But who's got the most all-time? Well, that would be Gennady Padalka. He's got 787 days in space, all right? Over 2 full years accumulated. 787's the record. I think Padalka did it over 5 missions. I think Whitson did her 66 days on 3 missions on there. So interesting as we push the envelope and spend more time in space. Here's 2 guys that spent some time, historic time in space on STS-3, and that is Gordon Fullerton on the right. He passed away at age 76 about 10 years ago. And on the left is Jack Lausma. And Jack Lausma is very healthy. Marty Winkle had a Grumman reunion with his Grummies a couple months ago, and I'm going to show you a picture of Jack there, looking very strong and healthy. Let me get a drink of fuel here. Okay, excuse me. Here is the landing with the landing gear not down yet. They had to land at White Sands because of water that had puddled up at Edwards Air Force Base. It was okay to land at Kennedy Space Center, but the way they put it, these two pilots said that they had flown 1,000 landings and hundreds of dozens of aircraft out there at White Sands, so they're very familiar with it. And they weren't that familiar with the new runway at Kennedy Space Center, where there were alligators on both ends of the runway and swamps on either side of it. So they went out there. It was a monumental task to bring Columbia back. I meant to throw a photograph in on that, but we will when we talk to Jim Harrington, because Jim was the future launch director, was then involved with shuttle processing as the manager of the shuttle program. And he was out there for that. Jim said that he didn't see a launch for the first 6 shuttles because he was always at the landing site. And George Page wanted him out there personally to make sure the landings went all right. This was an 8-day mission, okay, a pretty long mission. They tested the robotic arm. It was the 3rd test flight. These guys actually had ejection seats. There's Mark Usiak's photo of the wheels haven't touched down on the nose yet. There you see 2 guys under the wings, incredibly, taking pictures. It looks like they're pretty close, but Mark says they're about a quarter mile away from the wings. And there is Mark Usiak, all right? Can't thank him and his brother enough for what they brought to Stay Curious in the way of great photography and great stories. There is Jack Lausma a couple months ago with Bruce Melnick. Bruce is the resident astronaut now at Johnson Space Center Visitors Complex. We hope to get Bruce on here and talk about some of his missions. He worked the robotic arm on STS-49, where the only time 3 astronauts went out, and they actually grabbed the Telstar satellite to bring it into the payload base so it can be taken back to Earth for repairs. So we look forward to and great to see you, Jack, looking so good. Proud native son of Grand Rapids, Michigan. He lives in the Houston area, and we hope to get him on Stay Curious. I tried to effort him this week during the 40th anniversary of his mission. Of course, he spent 59 days in space on Skylab 3, or Skylab 2, however you look at it, the second crewed mission. And we thought we'd end today's Stay Curious program with a look at that big old star in our bright skies up there, the sun. This is a photograph taken through some special light to show the surface of the sun and activities going on it. And this is taken by the Solar Observatory, a European Space Agency spacecraft that's orbiting the sun. And it's now halfway between, it's orbiting, and it keeps getting closer and closer, and it is designed to withstand the heat. And this picture was taken 46 million miles away from the sun, okay? A little closer, not quite as close as Mercury is, okay? And it's going to go within 20 million miles of the sun. And this up-close look is the closest photograph we've taken of the flaming, if you will, surface of the sun. So astrophysics are always going to be scratching their head to wonder what happened there. So we got Mikey Haddad watching. Thank you for watching. Tom Celentano, appreciate you watching our show. He's another one we'd like to have on our Stay Curious program. Marie Gilbert's from the UK. Thank you for 530 stars there, Professor Keith Sewell. And Larry Pushkar's watching in Cold, Michigan. Dave Stange, thank you for watching. And Mark and Tom Usiak are spreading the word out there. One interesting sidebar about the STS-3 is that it was supposedly the first mission to take candy to space, M&Ms. But in a story that we put on our Facebook page from Collect Space, that we like sharing the stories on there from Robert Perlman. Thank you, Robert, for your wonderful website, Collect Space. Lausma doesn't remember the M&Ms or remember eating any of them. Now, he's 84 years old, so you're entitled to forget a few things. And, of course, Fullerton's not around anymore to talk about that. But well, we hope you've enjoyed a little bit of space history today and bragging about our wonderful museum that for 21 years has been preserving the birth of the American space age right where it all began, Brevard County. So we have got a great program scheduled tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss Gary Allgaier, a gentleman that I just met. He was very involved with our museum 10 years ago or so, with Spaceview Park and so forth, a good friend of our executive director, Karen Conklin. So we're happy to get Gary here on Stay Curious, and he will be a frequent visitor when he's around the Space Coast. We're going to do a great program tomorrow about the structural building of an Apollo command module, all right, and a little bit about the Apollo Soyuz test project, okay? So, Marty, thank you for everything. Nice, smooth program today, except me for getting my notes. Thank you for getting those. We've been so busy and so blessed, and we're working so hard on this golden anniversary of the dawn of the space shuttle era, which was when the U.S. Congress approved $5.5 billion to start building this spaceship, Columbia, in April 1972. So we hope you can make plans to watch that on Stay Curious if you can't be here in person, because we intend to broadcast the whole day's events April 16th from the Hyatt Place, a beautiful hotel that is now sponsoring our studios here at Stay Curious. So, all right, Marty, anything else? Well, we appreciate everybody staying curious. I'm Mark Marquette, and we will see you tomorrow to bridge the space between us.